My wife said she was going to a boring family reunion in Denver. I believed her because love makes you trust even when the signs scream otherwise. But that night, scrolling through my phone, I saw her aunt's post, crystal chandeliers, champagne, her family dressed in silk, and there my wife in a gown I'd never seen smiling under lights I wasn't invited to stand beneath. 90 miles away, I sat in silence, watching the people who once shook my hand raise their glasses like I'd never existed. So I posted one photo, nothing cruel, just honest, and within hours their perfect night cracked like glass. Sometimes all it takes is a single truth to ruin a lifetime of pretending. I'm Elias Crowder. And this isn't just about betrayal, it's about what silence can do to a marriage. I'm about to share something close to my heart. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments? Or tell me where you're from? I love hearing how far my story reaches. It's always good to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. And if you want more stories like mine, raw, real, and straight from the heart, don't forget to subscribe. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The first cold wind of December pushed through the cracks of our little house in Fort Collins, carrying with it the smell of pine and coffee. I remember that morning too clearly, the kind of quiet that feels fragile, like a porcelain cup you don't dare breathe on. The sunlight was pale, barely touching the kitchen tiles. I stood by the counter waiting for the coffee to finish dripping, while Marina scrolled through her phone, her thumb moving faster than usual. She looked beautiful, even in that hurried way, hair tied loosely, silk blouse half tucked into her jeans. But there was something in her face that morning, a small distance I couldn't name. She said it like she was mentioning a grocery list. There's a family reunion in Denver this weekend. Nothing exciting. You'd hate it. Her voice was light, practiced, and it brushed right past me. I asked if she wanted me to come along. She didn't look up when she answered. No, honey. It's going to be boring, just golf and old stories. You should take the weekend for yourself. She turned her phone face down on the table as she said it. I saw a flash before the screen went dark, just long enough to catch the words, rehearsal dinner list. It took less than a second, but something about it stayed behind like a splinter in my mind. Marina walked over to the closet and pulled out a garment bag. She hesitated, then unzipped it. Inside was a turquoise gown, silk, elegant, nothing like what you'd wear to a casual reunion. She held it against her body and looked at herself in the reflection of the microwave door, smiling a little. Maybe I'll bring this just in case Mom plans something fancier. You know how she gets. Then, almost as if she realized she'd said too much, she slipped the dress back into the bag and hung it behind the door. I laughed softly, though it didn't feel funny. Sounds like quite the boring weekend, I said. She kissed my cheek, her perfume faintly floral. Don't read too much into it, Elias. I'll be home Sunday night. After she left, the house felt too large. The wind howled against the window frames, rattling them gently, like the house itself knew something I didn't. I noticed the framed wedding photo hanging slightly crooked on the living room wall. I reached out to straighten it, but stopped halfway. The angle felt right off, but honest. On her side of the dresser sat the shoebox with the same turquoise heels I'd given her 2 anniversaries ago. She hadn't worn them once. I touched the lid, then stepped back. Maybe love means pretending not to notice the tiny lies that keep a marriage comfortable. Maybe. The kettle whistled. I poured the coffee, sat down, and stared at the door she'd just walked through. My phone buzzed with a work notification, but I ignored it. Instead, I opened my messages and typed a quick text to Zoe Rains, my friend from college, a photographer who lived nearby. You free this weekend? Need to get out of town for a bit. I didn't hit send right away. My thumb hovered over the screen as her car engine started outside. I looked at the empty mug she'd left by the sink and asked myself a question I didn't want to answer. If it's just a family reunion, why does she need a gown? The door clicked shut, and the sound carried longer than it should have. I met the Vellums 5 years ago, and since then I've learned that silence can be sharper than words. Their home in Denver sits high on a hill, all glass and symmetry, overlooking the city like a painting that refuses fingerprints. Every time I step inside, I feel the difference between where I came from and where they believe they belong. Last Christmas, they hosted a dinner theme white and silver. The table stretched the length of their dining room set with crystal glassware and candles that smelled like money. Marina guided me to the far end of the table next to the caterer's station. I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a seat. But halfway through the evening, I realized the conversations at their end of the table weren't meant for ears like mine. Stocks, art auctions, trust funds, each word floating like a secret code. Camille, my mother-in-law, smiled at me from across the table and said in that perfectly measured tone of hers, "Elias has such a grounded energy. It's refreshing, really, a charming contrast." The word contrast sat in my throat like ice. Across from me, Vanessa, Marina's cousin, laughed. "He looks more like an artist than a software engineer, doesn't he?" I laughed too, because what else could I do? Later that night, as we said our polite goodbyes, Camille pressed Marina's shoulder and said, "You two balance each other beautifully. You bring him polish and he brings you simplicity." I pretended not to hear, but the words echoed in my mind all the way home. It wasn't just that night. There was the summer barbecue I wasn't told about until I saw photos online. The group chat labeled Vellum Inner Circle that Marina claimed she forgot to add me to. Each time I told myself it was nothing. Families have dynamics. Some just take longer to warm up. But beneath that reasoning was something colder, the awareness that I would always be slightly out of frame. Marina had learned how to live in their world, speaking softly, smiling just right, never arguing when her mother corrected her. I admired her for it once. Now I wonder if she learned it to survive. The truth is, I let it happen. I learned how to stay quiet, to play the easy husband who didn't ask questions. It made her life smoother, and for a while that was enough for me. But lately I'd started to feel like the silence between us wasn't peace anymore. It was distance. That night after she left for Denver, I sat on the couch with the TV on mute. The house smelled like her perfume. My phone lit up with a new notification, her name at the top of the screen, but when I looked, the message had already disappeared. She caught my eyes on her phone earlier and said it was just work. I stared at the blank screen and tried to convince myself she was telling the truth. I thought about how many times I'd mistaken their indifference for sophistication, how many times I'd called their coldness just their way. Maybe I'd been translating cruelty into culture to make it easier to love her. I leaned back and closed my eyes, the echo of Camille's words floating back to me. "You bring him polish and he brings you simplicity." Maybe that's all they ever saw in me, a contrast, a prop that made their perfection more believable. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the window pane. Somewhere in Denver, they were probably toasting to something, maybe to family, maybe to keeping secrets. I didn't know then that the next time I'd see them all together, it wouldn't be at a dinner table. It would be on a glowing phone screen, laughing under chandeliers while I sat 90 miles away, realizing just how far outside that glass wall I'd always been. The night before Marina left felt strangely suspended, like time itself was waiting to see which one of us would break the silence first. The lamp in our bedroom gave off a soft yellow glow that didn't quite reach the corners. She was packing neatly folding clothes as if she were preparing for something more formal than she'd admitted. The turquoise gown was back out again, spread across the bed. She caught my glance and said I might take it just in case. "You never know what Mom might plan." Her tone was casual, but her hands moved too carefully over the fabric. The shoebox with the matching heels was open beside the suitcase. For a second I thought she might finally wear them. Then she hesitated, closed the lid, and set it aside. I sat on the edge of the bed, pretending to check my phone. "You're leaving early," I said. "Didn't you say it starts Saturday?" She zipped the bag without looking up. "Traffic into Denver's been awful. Better to go ahead tonight." I nodded, but something about her voice felt rehearsed. When she handed me her phone to help connect a playlist to the car Bluetooth, a notification flashed briefly across her screen before disappearing. Rehearsal floor plan, Jonah and Celeste. I froze. The names belonged to her younger brother and his girlfriend. Rehearsal for what? A dinner, a party. My thumb hesitated over the screen, but she had already taken the phone back. "Thanks," she said, tucking it into her purse before I could ask. Later that evening, I called Zoe. She was the kind of friend who never asked too many questions, but always knew when I needed an escape. How about an early shoot-up at Estes Park, I suggested. Sunrise snow. No people might clear my head. There was a small pause on the line before she said yes, a hesitation I noticed but didn't understand then. 6 a.m., she finally replied. Bring gloves. It'll be freezing. Downstairs, Marina was switching out her phone wallpaper. I caught a glimpse of it over her shoulder, a long white table draped with flowers, glasses glinting under soft lights. Pretty, I said, trying to sound casual. She smiled, closing the screen. Just Pinterest inspiration. I love clean color palettes. We ate in near silence. Every small sound, the scrape of a fork, the hum of the refrigerator felt like it was filling in for the words we weren't saying. She was leaving an hour earlier than she'd planned, and the more I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, the louder that unspoken question grew inside me. Why does she look like she's dressing for a celebration while calling it a reunion? When she finally walked toward the door, coat draped neatly over her arm, I stood there unsure what to say. She smiled faintly, kissed me on the cheek, and said, Don't wait up. I'll call when I get there. The door closed behind her, and a gust of cold air rushed in before silence reclaimed the house. I turned toward the bedroom, noticing the garment bag still hanging on the back of the door, black, smooth, unmoving, the kind of silence that hides more than it admits. I placed my hand on the shoebox, pressing the lid shut. Then my phone buzzed. It was Zoe. Tomorrow, 6:00 a.m. Estes Park. Bring your camera and warm socks. The wind picked up outside, whistling against the windows like it was trying to warn me. I didn't know it yet, but the mountains I was heading toward weren't going to give me peace. They were going to hand me the truth I'd been refusing to see. By the time dawn stretched over the peaks of Estes Park, the air was sharp enough to bite. Zoe and I had spent the early morning chasing light across the snow, her camera clicking steadily while the world stayed still. For a few hours I managed to lose myself in it, the rhythm of footsteps on frozen ground, the hiss of breath in the cold, the simple beauty of not thinking. We ducked into a small cafe afterward, our boots leaving trails of melted snow on the wooden floor. The place smelled like cinnamon and fresh espresso. I remember the warmth hitting my face as I sat down, feeling human again for the first time in days. Zoe ordered 2 coffees and pulled out her phone, scrolling through the photos we'd taken. We talked about exposure light balance, nothing serious, until she went suddenly quiet. Eli, she said softly, you need to see this. She turned the phone toward me. On the screen was a post from Aunt Beatrice Vellum, Marina's aunt, the one who always documented every family milestone. The caption read, Celebrating Jonah and Celeste's engagement tonight. So proud. The image beneath the words stole the air from my lungs. A ballroom glowed under chandeliers, tables wrapped in white and silver, a wall of flowers behind the stage. Front and center was Marina in the turquoise gown. She was raising a glass beside her brother, her smile wide and easy, the kind of smile that used to belong to me. I scrolled down with a hand that wasn't steady. More photos, more angles. The entire Vellum family together, their laughter frozen in perfect frames. Camille in a floor-length dress, Jonah and Celeste kissing under falling petals. Every image confirmed what I didn't want to believe. There was no family reunion. There never had been. My chest felt hollow. The air in the cafe too thin. Zoe's voice sounded far away when she said my name. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen until my reflection blurred into theirs. 90 miles away, my wife was at her brother's engagement party, one I hadn't been invited to. One I hadn't even known existed. I tried calling her. Once, twice, 3 times. Straight to voicemail. I typed a message. I'm looking at the photos. Please tell me why. It showed as delivered, never read. Zoe reached across the table, but I pulled back. I didn't want comfort. I wanted the truth, and it wasn't coming from her. I opened the comments section under the post. So lovely that the whole family was there tonight. One person wrote. Aunt Beatrice had reacted with a heart. The word family sat there like a wound I couldn't close. I left the cafe, stepping into the thin mountain air. The world had gone quieter, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I walked along the edge of a frozen lake, my breath turning to clouds. The anger that should have come never did. What filled me instead was humiliation, a deep, steady ache that started in my throat and worked its way down. I thought of the wedding photo hanging crooked on our wall, the turquoise heels still in their box the way she'd told me not to come. Maybe this was the truth I hadn't wanted to face. I wasn't part of her family, not really. I was an accessory she could set aside when it didn't fit the room. Snow began to fall soft at first, then heavier. I sat on a bench by the lake and watched it blur the world into white. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just let it cover me until everything heard the photos. The laughter faded into the same cold silence. When I finally stood, Zoe was there, camera in hand. She didn't say a word. She lifted the lens and snapped a photo of me against the snow face, unreadable, the mountains stretching behind me. "Keep this," she said quietly. "You might need it someday." I didn't understand what she meant then. But later, when that image would reach the same people who had erased me, I'd realize what she saw in that moment: a man stripped of every lie, except the one he refused to keep living. Night settled over Estes Park with the kind of quiet that presses against your ribs. The fire crackled inside the small mountain lodge, throwing gold light against the frosted windows. Zoe sat cross-legged on the rug, editing photos on her laptop, her face lit in alternating shades of orange and blue. I sat beside the fireplace, the glow reflecting in my phone screen. The mountains outside were swallowed by darkness, but the weight in my chest felt heavier than anything beyond those walls. I opened the gallery and stared at the picture she had taken that morning, me standing in the snow, half in light, half in shadow. My expression looked unfamiliar, like someone who'd already lost more than he realized. I thought about the post I'd seen, the laughter, the chandeliers, the turquoise gown. 90 miles away, they were still probably celebrating, oblivious that the man they had erased was still breathing. I typed out a caption without thinking. "Some reunions celebrate who's missing, not who's there." The words sat on the screen for a long time. My thumb hovered over the post button, hesitating between pride and grief. Then I pressed it. The photo went live at 9:12 p.m. At 9:31, the first notification appeared. By 9:40, 10 people had shared it. Friends from college, co-workers, even a few I hadn't spoken to in years. A comment popped up. "Eli, are you okay?" Another read. "That's heavy, man." I turned the screen face down and stared into the fire until the logs collapsed into embers. By midnight, the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The vibration echoed through the wooden floor, steady as a heartbeat I didn't want to feel. I finally silenced it and fell asleep on the couch, the phone face down beside me. When morning came, sunlight pushed through the curtains like a confession. Zoe was already up, sipping coffee, her expression cautious. "You might want to check your phone," she said. My inbox was flooded, missed calls, unread messages, tagged posts. Someone had screenshotted my caption and shared it with a headline: "Man excluded from wife's family event posts, haunting photo." Within hours, the story had spread. I saw comments from strangers he didn't even get invited, classic upper-class cruelty. The room tilted slightly as I scrolled. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was exposure. The photo that had been nothing but a release of pain was now being dissected by people who didn't know me, turned into something larger than my marriage. Down in Denver, at that same moment, the Vellum's perfect night was crumbling. A video surfaced from the engagement party, a waiter filming the family laughing when someone mentioned the post. Camille's smile froze mid-sentence. Her face stiffened, eyes sharp as glass. I replayed that video over and over, not for satisfaction, but to understand the look in her eyes. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. Fear that their illusion had cracked. At noon, a message from Marina arrived. "You're making me look bad. You're making us look bad." I stared at her words until they blurred. Then I typed back, "You did that yourself, the moment you lied. I just stopped keeping your secret." I didn't send anything else. There was nothing left to defend. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm. Fear and relief tangled together like the first deep breath after holding it too long. Outside, the wind howled again, sweeping snow against the windows. My phone buzzed one last time that evening, a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I saw the name, my stomach turned cold. Camille Vellum. I let it ring. I watched the fire burn lower, thinking of how quickly warmth becomes ash. The storm outside was only beginning, but it was nothing compared to the one waiting beyond that call. 2 days after the post, I drove back to Fort Collins. The snow had deepened, weighing down the pine branches that framed our street. From the outside, the house looked exactly the same, quiet, neat, unbothered. Inside, everything was too still, as if time had chosen not to move until I returned. The faint smell of stale coffee hung in the air. On the back of the bedroom door, the turquoise gown she'd worn to the party still hung half unzipped. I stood there for a long time, staring at it like it could answer something. My phone vibrated again. A voicemail notification blinked. I pressed play. Camille's voice filled the room, calm but commanding. "Elias, we need to talk. Marina's falling apart. Take the post down. This isn't something that should be aired publicly. We can fix this, but not like this." I deleted it before she finished. The idea of her saying we like I was still part of their family made me laugh under my breath. Seconds later, a message from Marina appeared. "You made my mother cry. They think I can't control you, please stop." I set the phone down, unable to tell if I felt angry or just empty. That's when I saw the new email in my inbox, no sender name, just a subject line. "You should know." The message read, "She never told them she married you in a courthouse. The family presented her as single for PR reasons." I read it 3 times, my hands cold against the keyboard. The Vellums had built their empire on appearances. Now I realized I'd been part of their performance, a secret they could hide when the cameras showed up. At noon, a colleague from my firm called. "Hey, Elias. Look, I don't know what's going on, but one of our clients is connected to the Vellum family. They're nervous about the attention. They might pull their account if this keeps trending." For a second, I couldn't speak. I thanked him and hung up, the irony cutting deep. I'd spent years working to build stability, and now the truth was threatening to undo it all. When Zoe showed up later that afternoon, she carried a magazine folded open to a feature article. "You've gone viral," she said, handing it to me. The headline read, "A photo that divided class lines." Beneath it, the caption described me as a symbol of how silence protects privilege. I didn't know whether to laugh or feel sick. My private heartbreak had become a public statement. By sunset, the light faded into a bruised orange. I heard the front door open and close softly. Marina's heels clicked against the hardwood floor before stopping in the hallway. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was trembling, not with guilt, but exhaustion. She stood there in her fur-lined coat, her hair pulled tight. Her eyes were red, her tone brittle. "You turned my family into a spectacle." "No," I said, "I just stopped pretending your family's kindness was real." She flinched but didn't look away. "You don't understand, Elias. My mother has worked her whole life to build that reputation. She just wanted things perfect for Jonah. You humiliated her." "Then she should have invited me," I said evenly. "She should have stood by the truth." Marina's voice cracked. "She told me if you came, it would ruin everything. The donors, the press, the sponsors." She stopped, realizing what she'd admitted. "So she told everyone you were single?" I asked quietly. "That's what this was about, image." Her silence said more than any confession could. She looked small, then almost transparent. "I just wanted peace," she whispered. I picked up the turquoise heels still in their box and placed them on the dresser. "Peace built on lies isn't peace, Marina. It's decoration." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I nodded slowly. "Neither did I. But once the truth is out, you can't choose who hears it." The clock ticked between us, each second stretching longer than the last. The anger inside me had cooled into something sharper clarity. I wasn't shouting anymore. I wasn't pleading. I was finished trying to fit into a picture that was never made for me. I grabbed my coat from the chair and slung it over my shoulder. She looked up, startled. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere quiet," I said. "You can keep the house, the stories, the family name." I'm keeping what's left of my dignity. I walked past her down the hallway that still smelled faintly of her perfume. At the door, I turned once more. She was standing by the window, framed by the same light that once made her glow. Now it only cast a shadow. Outside, the snow was falling thick and steady. The street was empty, the world wrapped in silver silence. I started the car and sat there for a long minute watching the warm light from our window spill across the snow. For a fleeting second, I wanted her to come out to stop me. But she didn't move. As I pulled away, the reflection of the house shrank in the rearview mirror until it was just a glow in the distance, soft, unreachable, already fading. I thought about what Camille had said in her message about fixing things quietly. Maybe that was always their way, bury the truth under enough luxury until no one remembers what's missing. But some things can't stay buried forever. The snow kept falling, the world muted except for the hum of the engine. I whispered into the quiet. The truth didn't destroy us. The silence did. And then I drove into the dark, leaving the lies behind, letting the night close around me like the first breath of freedom. A week after I left, Marina texted me. The message was brief, formal, almost businesslike. Mom wants to meet. We should end this properly. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back, where and when. She replied within a minute. Cherry Creek, the Regency Room, 7 p.m. The same place where every Vellum celebration was held. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I arrived, the city lights were reflected in the wet pavement, fractured like pieces of glass. The restaurant was dimly lit, filled with the low hum of money and restraint. A hostess led me to a private room in the back, the kind reserved for people who didn't want to be overheard. Inside, the table was set with white flowers and crystal glasses. It looked exactly like the engagement photos, every detail down to the folded napkins. Camille Vellum sat at the head of the table, perfectly composed. Marina was beside her, eyes, downcast fingers knotting and unknotting the hem of her sleeve. Across from them, Jonah leaned back, arms crossed, his expression somewhere between pity and discomfort. I sat opposite Marina. The air between us was thick enough to taste. Camille was the first to speak. Elias. She began, her voice steady. We're not here to argue. We simply want to bring closure to an unfortunate situation. If you take the post down, we can all move forward. The family's image doesn't need to suffer more than it already has. I looked at her and almost laughed. You mean your image? The kind of normal where I pretend I don't exist? Marina's voice trembled. Please, Elias. You don't understand. Mom just wants peace. Peace, I said quietly, or silence. No one spoke for several seconds. The only sound was the faint clink of a fork against porcelain from another room. Then, as if on cue, a waiter entered, placing a sealed envelope on the table. For the Vellum family, he said before leaving. Camille reached for it, but I was faster. Inside was a letter from the restaurant manager thanking the Vellum family for booking the entire venue for Jonah and Celeste's engagement party. I slid the letter across the table toward her. A family event, huh? Not just Jonah's celebration. You rented out the whole place. Camille's smile never faltered. You're reading too much into this. You're not part of our social circle, Elias. You never were. Marina was trying to protect you. I leaned back. By deleting me from her life one photo at a time, Marina's lips parted but no sound came out. The silence grew sharp. Then Jonah spoke, his voice hesitant. Mom, enough. He deserves to know. I told you he should have been invited. His eyes flicked to me. But they said it would make things complicated. And Marina... He trailed off. Marina's eyes filled, but she didn't deny it. She'd nodded. She'd agreed to keep me out. I felt the air leave my lungs. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. You know, I said evenly, Beatrice sent me something. I thought I'd return the favor. I tapped the screen and the room filled with the faint sound of clinking glasses and laughter. Then came Camille's unmistakable voice, clear as crystal. It's a relief Marina could keep her husband away tonight. Marina covered her mouth. Camille froze. Jonah looked like he wanted to disappear. You wanted everything perfect, I said, standing now. But perfection doesn't exist, Camille. It just hides the cracks long enough for the light to get in. Marina's tears came fast. I didn't mean to hurt you, Elias. I just didn't want to embarrass you. No, I said, my voice low. You were embarrassed by me. I turned to her. You were scared they'd see you with someone who doesn't wear the right suit, who doesn't own a mountain house, who doesn't speak their language. You were scared they'd see how human you really are. The video kept playing on the table, laughter echoing through the small room. I didn't stop it. The sound filled the air like a confession no one wanted to hear. I picked up my coat. You wanted silence, Camille. Here it is. I turned to Marina. You wanted peace. This is what peace sounds like when you finally stop pretending. I walked out, leaving the laughter still playing behind me. In the hallway, a mirror stretched across the wall, polished and unforgiving. I paused and looked at my reflection. For the first time, I didn't see a man trying to fit in. I saw someone who had finally stopped asking for permission to exist. As I stepped outside, the Denver air was cold and clear. The city glimmered behind me like broken glass. When the crystal wall finally shatters, I thought you don't need to pick up the pieces. Everything inside it was already fake. A month after that night, I was living alone in Glenwood Springs. Spring was just beginning to loosen winter's grip. The snow on the mountains had started to melt, sending thin rivers of cold water rushing through the valleys. My new apartment was small, one window facing the ridge, one desk, one bed, but sunlight poured through every corner. It smelled like pine and new beginnings. I'd taken a freelance job with a local media group. They'd found me through the Post. Apparently, truth sells when it's raw enough. The irony made me smile. One morning, I received a letter in handwriting I recognized instantly. Elias. It read, I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to stand beside you. Mom is sick now. Jonah's moved out. The family's falling apart, and maybe that's fair. They built their life on pretending. I hope you're doing better than we are. It was signed, Marina. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. There was no anger left, just quiet acceptance. That afternoon, Zoe called. There's a photo exhibition opening at Estes Park next week. It's about truth and identity. They want to feature your picture. I almost said no. But something in her voice, proud, gentle, made me say yes. Driving up through the mountains, the roads were still lined with snow. The same turns I'd taken weeks before looked softer now, thawing under the spring sun. When I reached the summit, the air was sharp but forgiving. Zoe was waiting near the lodge, standing beside a canvas print taller than either of us. It was my photo, the one she'd taken that morning by the lake. Me half in light, half in shadow. Beneath it, in clean black letters, truth doesn't destroy. It exposes. For a long time, I just stood there looking at it. People passed by, pausing to read the caption, some nodding quietly. A journalist approached me later. You know, she said, your photo has reached people all over. It's become a message for anyone who's been made to feel small for telling the truth. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I was just trying to survive. But maybe that's what truth really is, a survival instinct that refuses to die. Before leaving, I checked my phone. A new email sat in my inbox. It was from Aunt Beatrice. They've cut me off, she wrote. But I don't regret it. That night needed light. Thank you for giving it to them. I closed the message and looked out across the peaks. The snow glistened under the sun, the air thin and bright. I climbed a short trail above the lodge until I reached a ledge overlooking the valley. The wind was strong enough to sting, carrying the scent of melted ice and pine. I whispered to no one. I used to think silence kept the peace. Now I know it only hides the bleeding. I lifted my camera and took another picture, the horizon burning gold where the sun cut through the mist. The moment felt whole, unforced. That night back in my apartment, I uploaded the image. The caption read, "The mountain doesn't lie, it just stands." By morning, thousands had shared it. Among the comments, one caught my eye. "It's beautiful, Elias. Thank you for teaching me to stand. It was signed simply Marina. I didn't reply. Some words don't need answers. They just need to exist. The sun climbed higher outside my window, brushing the mountains in light. I stepped onto the balcony, breathing in the cool air, the world below still wrapped in silence. For the first time in a long while, that silence didn't feel like a cage. It felt like space. There are losses you don't heal from, only truths you learn to carry. I looked toward the peaks, the snow beginning to melt under the morning sun, and thought, the world doesn't owe me an apology. It only owes me the chance to keep standing. And then I walked back inside, the light following me warm and unbroken.